Okay, now we're going to do Form 4 at a walkthrough pace. Something about these samurai sword forms, or in the Ninjato forms, is that, first of all, Form 1 and 2 flow perfectly together using a katana, using a samurai sword. Form 3 and 4 flow perfectly together using the Ninjutsu style sword, the Ninjato. Now, you can put them all together. So when people generally do a black belt test with me in the weapons, they link all 4 forms together. Another thing about these forms is when I originally was learning many of these forms, that I was learning a much slower progression. So for example, Form 1 was draw, overhead cut, de-blood, and put the sword away. Okay, so that'd be Form 1. Form 2 was adding this. Okay, Form 3, we moved behind us. So I just said, you know, I think people can learn a little faster than that. And for me, the samurai sword was such a slow, really painfully slow progression that I decided to kind of link them all together. So we've kind of linked them together. And again, Form 1 and 2, they flow together very, very well. Form 3 and 4 flow together really well, but you can put them all together using a Ninjato or a samurai sword. You can really choose which one you want to do. Form 4 that we're about to do kind of completes your samurai sword training in this particular course. And this is a fairly simple form, so it's not that hard. So we start with the draw. We bring the sword to our back. When I teach little kids this, I oftentimes just say, bring the sword to your back. I like to do the cool little twirl there. Now the blade is not touching my back, it's the dull part of the sword is on my back. Okay, then from here I drop down to the bow. Now I come up, and I'm going to do a side cut. And I'm reaching, followed by a spinning side cut. And a lot of this form is power and momentum, okay? So for these two movements, we're coming, whoa, I'm really reaching power in that momentum, and I'm coming down to finish them with a downward cut. After the downward cut, I'm going to cross my arms this way, and I'm going to block with my left hand, and my sword blocks out here like this. I'm going to do a palm strike and a punch. The palm strike is not so much of a palm strike, but it's more of a block and punch. And then I cover or deflect and thrust with the sword as I move forward. And now I'm facing the opposite direction. Now I bring the sword overhead, and I'm going to do a downward diagonal cut. And from here, I'm going to do a jumping diagonal cut. Again, building on that momentum. So again, I was here. Now, this next technique, I take my hand and I re-grip the sword. I turn, look, and my sword comes to my hip, and I block with my hand. Okay, this is called hidden sword. We'll explain in the applications. Now I come forward with a reverse cut. You've seen this, we did this in form number 3, and I look to the center, right where I started from. I do 3 figure eights, and I put the sword away. I bring the scabbard to the sword, bring it to my right side, and bow. Now, if you started this from the very beginning with form number 1, I believe in the video course I mentioned this. Form number 1 oftentimes starts with my sword on the right side. I bow, then I bring the sword here, and then I begin form number 1. Right? So I do all the techniques. And now here we are at the end of form number 4. We're here, we do our figure eights, and we're going to end in the same spot, same position as we did with form number 1. About some of the applications using the Ninjato, and you'll see some of these applications from form 3 and form 4. And one thing I want to reiterate is that if I'm using a sword, a weapon where I can use one-handed, okay, and the Ninjato is a little lighter, a little shorter than a traditional samurai sword. So some of these movements we use one hand with it, where a traditional samurai sword would be really hard to use one-handed because it's such a heavier sword. Okay, so when I'm using one hand, my other hand is always doing something. So if my opponent here is coming at me with the sword, if I have one hand, this hand is here. Right? So you see this a lot in the forms where I'm catching with one hand and then striking with the other hand. Okay? So that's one thing to think about, is when you're seeing these movements in the form where we're doing this kind of stuff, a lot of it is grabbing and striking with one hand. Okay, so you come at me once, buddy. So here, here. I can come up through here, here. So you see that a lot. Like this. And I'm side cut here. My momentum comes here. Again. This cut can go to the body and then come back around to the hands, to the head. I can use the guard handle of the sword. We see another technique using momentum where we're doing a diagonal cut to a jumping diagonal cut. And this can be done, you can do this position here, downward diagonal, and then jump around for the diagonal. That's a really fun one to practice in class. Or in this form, we're here, downward diagonal, and then jumping around for it. So in this application, I'm here, my opponent strikes at me, however, and I'm attacking his hands. Okay, now I'm not going to hit his hands now, because that's a good way to lose students, but the reality is I'm hitting his hands. So we'll do it really slow, so hit real slow ones. So I'm striking his hands, okay? So go ahead and, if I hit his hands, there's a good, it's very possible that he may drop his sword, and then when he does, I'm going to move back around for the jumping cut. See in the sword form that you see in a couple of the forms is the hidden stance. The hidden stance is designed where my sword is behind me, and I don't know how the camera angle is right now for you guys, but it's supposed to be designed where it's kind of hard to see where my weapon is, how long my weapon is. So you can probably tell I have a sword behind me, but by using my body like this, it kind of hides the length of the sword, making it challenging for my opponent to kind of understand what distance he needs to use to strike at me. Okay, so the sword comes at me,